Good afternoon. Yeah, welcome to this CCMRM seminar series. We have with us Professor Gopal Krishnan. Gopal Krishnan is from Bentley University and having a rich experience of teaching in financial and management accounting, as well as he is having acclaimed researcher, accomplished researcher of publishing in several high-quality journals. And fortunately, he's here on Fulbright scholarship. And I'm sure Srini must have influenced him to stay in Bangalore. So thanks to Professor Srini Rangan for pulling him towards Bangalore rather than any other IIM Bangalore. So when I requested him for a lecture, he kindly agreed for it. It's our fortune that this paper is going to present. Do female-friendly boards mitigate gender pay gap among directors? We know that even in Indian context also, the SEBI regulations are mandatory about inclusion of the women directors. So welcome, Professor Gopal Krishnan. Thanks. And I am happy that most of my colleagues have come. He is Sheshidhar Murthy, Atira, Venu, Sumit, Varun, distance sciences, economics or distance science? Economics, and Marishwar and Rajaram is our PhD students. They have completed PhD and they are working with some research assignments, both of them.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know the risk of doing a seminar after lunch. You know what's happens. So I'm known to put people to sleep, so I will try my best to keep you awake. So I want to thank Professor Jaydev for this excellent opportunity, and also Professor Srini being an excellent host, and IAMB for hosting me. And also I want to thank the US India Educational Foundation, which is funding my trip as a Fulbright Nehru Fellow. So I'm really excited. I've been here for about 10 days or so. And this is a brand new paper with my PhD student, Yandru, who is in the fourth year. So we are looking at do female-friendly mitigate gender pay gap among directors. I don't need to finish all the slides. So jump in if you have questions as we go along. So, you know, the gender pay gap is been around for a long time. And recently we found this when we are preparing for the talk. There is a college in New York called Vassar College, and it's all women college. And there, some people, female professors are accusing that they've been underpaid for 2 decades. So what makes it interesting is this is a female college where the females are discriminated against. So, and you know, this just happened like in the last 2 months. So the lawsuit has been filed. So, you know, it will be interesting to see. You cannot see here. So students are actually protesting here. If you look closely, they're all protesting in favor of the female professors. I guess what they are saying, you know, I don't know the details, but what they're saying is the male professors get paid more than the female professors. So obviously the lawyers will go into work on statistically trying to prove there is a difference in all those things, you know, what's a sample. But the very fact that this even happened at a female college, that itself is interesting. So, but I'm sure we will hear more about this. So just to give you some background, you know, why this topic is important. It's been documented, you know, the gender pay gap is a detriment to economic growth. In US, the price tag is about 1.6 trillion, which is bigger than the GDP of some countries. So the idea is when women are underpaid, they spend less on, you know, whatever goods and services that obviously has a direct impact on the growth of the economy. And the second point is in the US, after the murder of George Floyd in 2020, Now, D, E, and I has become a very important topic. So now we all been asked to include D, E, and I in our classes. And we were saying, we teach accounting. He said, well, you're going to have to find something. So fortunately, maybe I can talk about this. Then I also saw that under Wharton, there is protest for including too much D, E, and I. So it's a very controversial issue right now, but clearly they're just, universities are hiring vice president D, E, and I. It's become like such a very important thing. And also very recently in the European Council, they have a legislation where they are saying that if the gender pay gap is 5%, then the companies are obligated to address why it is happening and fix it. If they don't, they are facing significant fines. So, that's very recent, 2023. And another one was, when we are working on this topic, you always have this question, is this an interesting topic? We think it's interesting, then the reviewers come back and say, no, it's not interesting. But then this happened. The 2023 Nobel Prize in Economics went to Professor Claudia Goldin at Harvard. And guess what the topic? Gender equity, but she's been studying them for her entire life. So anyway, so all these things shows this is, an important topic to society at large. Now, coming to the research, there is obviously, labor economists have been studying this for a long time, okay? But, our focus is not on everybody. We are just focusing only on the directors. So there is some limited research looking at the gender pay gap among the executives, meaning CEOs. But, we make the argument that it's important to look at beyond CEOs for a few reasons. Number one is, when you look at the percentage of women who are CEOs among Fortune 500 companies, these are 500 largest companies in the US, is about 10%. But look at the directors among Fortune 500, it's like 22%. So the point we are trying to make is CEO sample obviously is important, but there is a larger pool that has not been studied. So that's the one argument. And then there is a second argument, yes. Yeah.
You'll probably get into this later. But in India, the independent directors or the non-executive directors, they generally get only sitting fees, and I don't know what else they get. I'm not commissions.
Bonus something.
They get commission.
Commission. Okay. Yeah.
But that's true of others. Stock options are not so common. So here I'm just saying the point I'm trying to make is when you get down below the CEO level, non-executive directors, ex ante, you may the pay gap may be less because the variance itself is good.
Yeah, actually, we make that point. That makes our setting more interesting because the confounds are less. Meaning, if there is a gender pay gap, we will find it. Whereas, so the point Srini is making is an important one, which is when you look at the CEO pay, the variability is very high because the heterogeneity is also huge. Because CEOs sometimes you have a super star CEOs in their 30s or people with a lot of skill set. Where the director, it's a little bit more homogeneous. So what that means is there is less variation. So if there is if you control for all the determinants, we should not find anything actually.
There's a lot of variability in performance. So as you get lower, the kind of roles they have to play and the KPIs will be smaller.
Well, generally what happens is, you get a fee for serving on a committee. So it's sort of like if you sit on the audit committee, then there's a $10,000 flat for all those people. But if you don't, the pay package is fairly standard, unlike the pay package for. Correct. Yeah. So.
Just pressing this point.
Yeah.
Go below CEO. The variance is lower. It's also easier to identify the performance.
Correct. Yeah.
So therefore, if you find people smaller difference, it would appear to be really a gender difference.
Correct. Yeah.
Larger, like a CEO kind of thing.
Yeah, we actually make the same argument. So why, our setting is important. We actually provide the coefficient of variation from the CEO gender gap studies is like 165%. Our coefficient of variation is 48%, meaning that, it's a very tight distribution. So gender should not matter, but it does. So then there is also another important reason why we want to look at directors. See, for the limited studies that looked at CEO, what they found was female CEOs make less money than male CEOs, but there is one complicating factor, okay, which makes the interpretation harder. The complicating factor is, it turns out that economists have studied this for a long time, females are more risk averse. So when they're offered compensation as CEO, they want more cash and they prefer less stock because stock is more riskier. So then if it is a case, you cannot say this is gender discrimination because by choice, they wanted no stock or less stock, they wanted more cash. But if the stock performs better, then clearly, there is a possibility. So, this risk aversion thing complicates how should we interpret when there is a, pay difference. But fortunately, in our setting, it is less of a problem because, the package is pretty much standard for all directors. There is a very small variation. So basically, you get cash, about 40%, 60% stock, same deal for everybody. So meaning, if you're a star CEO, you have a huge negotiating power, and you don't have that here because you're more like a compensation taker rather than a compensation setter like the CEO. I think that's also an important point here. And, there are huge differences in the UK, 73% gap among FTSE companies, even when you look at non-executive, directors. Yeah.
Or we assume that women, let's say, sit in lesser number of committees.
Mm-hmm.
The overall director compensation will be lower.
Correct.
So
We control for that.
so it is just initial, whatever the compensation that has been agreed.
Well, we control for director attributes, including number of committees they serve, their age, and then education, tenure. So the things that we can think of, or the usual suspects. So the number of committees, clearly you make more money if you sit on more committees, but that's controlled for in the model.
Like there have been a CEO in another company.
Oh, no.
I'm assuming if there is a gender gap there.
Mm-hmm. You mean like people who were CEO somewhere, director in this company? Mm-hmm. Correct.
Opportunity cost of time is very
Correct.
So if you have to sit director.
No, I don't think it works like this. So, but there are other reasons why somebody wants to sit on a board. It could be networking, signaling, or they, whatever that might be. But the package is fairly standard for all directors. You could be a star CEO somewhere. You are not going to get more money. It's a pretty standard deal. So that's what I'm saying. The negotiating power is very, very limited for a director.
So is this a matter of law or is it just
It's market. It's basically market, whatever the market pays. There is no legislation, compensation is not regulated. So it's.
Why is it that it's standard?
That seems to be the practice. Practice, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so it's,
Yeah.
it is a statement that for the compensation practice is a standard.
Yeah.
The thing is, I can tell you what happens. There is a nomination committee.
Correct.
Which looks at what role you play.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be some directors coming in with more strategic contribution to the board.
So
there could be some difference. Yeah, but otherwise, there could be no.
see, the nominating committee identifies who are all the potential recruiters based on the talent. Like, for example, say the company is going to set up a shop in China. That means I want a director with that kind of experience. So they go and look for that person. So, those things come into matter when they do the recruitment stage. But once they are in, it's more or less, the same. Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is the variation is very tight. Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
each director who's recruited
Mhm.
has a role.
Correct. And the compensation reflects that role. Yeah.
Some variable,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
not based on gender.
Correct.
It'll be based on
Exactly.
what-
Yeah, the point is well taken. So meaning that once, if we control for those things, which drive the compensation, we should not find a result.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Women are more likely to have a career gap as compared to male directors, right?
Mhm.
So do you also control for career gap? Because that would well determine the compensation, right?
Hmm. So you're saying that they took a leave
Yes, yes.
and then coming
And
back?
they are more likely to take leave for maternity
Hmm.
or otherwise. As
But
compared
the compensation is not dependent on all those things. Like when you said, you have a set of talent, the company wants your talent, so they can see what roles you can play in the company. So we set the compensation based on that. It doesn't matter if you took a leave for 5 years, as long as you still have the expertise the company can use. So,
the negotiation might reduce. For example, when they want to join after a break,
mhm.
they may not be in a position to negotiate.
Yeah, we haven't done that. But it would be very hard to collect. Ideally, what we need is we would need to have their CVs for many years just to see when they took the break. Those are all, I don't know if that's,
They come to age letter,
yeah.
So what they did earlier doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? What we did just before we joined. What we did go for a corporate career.
Yeah.
Not at the full-
Yeah.
Okay, that's that.
Say that again?
But yeah, not-
So the clarificatory question is as follows: the compensation or the package of individual director, is it determined individually, or there is
Yeah.
some like rule by which?
Well, like I said, it's sort of like, it's not very different than recruiting assistant professors at a university. There is a guideline,
Yeah,
but let's say if there's a superstar candidate, there will be some adjustment. It's like that. So generally, the parameters are set, but there's some, adjustments.
but typically the variation is less.
Yeah.
That's what you are mainly
Correct.
highlighting.
I have a point. So just to add to Arun's point, actually, I think if you, so basically you're controlling for age, right? So with his argument, it could be just mechanical that you observe a pay gap if when you're controlling for age,
Mhm.
as in like a 50-year-old male director, could be getting equal pay with, let's say, some 55-year-old female director just because she took a career gap.
Mhm.
So controlling for age, it's not clear if it's required or
So you're saying don't control for age?
it's hard. Like I understand that.
Yeah.
So when you control for age, you're bringing that bias in automatically, right? So like
Yeah, I think the point is the directorship, right? It's not the number of years. The quality of them seems making this right better.
yeah.
If what you said was true, you not use age as a, but a friend to use age. If you're using age as a component that you're not. A 50-year-old male and a 55-year-old female.
Mhm.
No.
Mhm.
So why we go for age?
Mhm.
Yeah.
See, age is also a proxy for expertise in general.
So yeah. So experience.
No, even see, obviously a 70-year-old male would have had gone through a lot of variety of experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
Therefore, his position is more.
Right.
Because he would be able to figure out.
Right.
50-year-old female would not be able to do that.
Right.
So the point is age is more of a proxy, not for just the experience, the range of decisions they would have taken.
No, I'm talking about the inverse case where the female is older.
See, you got it, right? In the board, it's a self-selected choice.
Right.
You're actually seeking the.
Right.
For a specific role.
Right.
So you know that they will fit that. role. If
Right.
it was a male candidate, you would have gone for that.
Right, right.
So the point is, after selecting that, what he's saying is, you still find a gap in what you
Yeah.
pay them relative to somebody else. Control of the.
It could be, so if you had enough of a pool of people, right? Then, you pick people who have the requisite, talent and skills, and you pay them accordingly. right? But if you don't, why is it, why is it not economically rational? For someone to discriminate in the sense that both of you are the same age, right, but one of you has had more time off. So I pay that guy less, because to me, it's a proxy for what he brings to the table. So, I think it's about.
Yeah, well, I think what I can say is, we can do a sensitivity test dropping age and then see
Right.
what happens.
Right.
But the referees will pound
I
on
know,
us
I know.
if you don't have age, because that is probably the single most important attribute other than gender. So it would be, in my opinion, it would be very hard to make a case for excluding age. But again, we can see what,
Maybe just subbing with years of experience, just as a robustness, like if
how will you get the years of experience?
their employment history, right?
Tenure, we have tenure. So we have tenure as another.
Tenure is just with this board, right? So, yeah, but
If they wouldn't take a lot of career gap, would not have reached a position where they would have gotten in the
Mhm.
It's the flip other way. So you might probably take a 2-3 year off here and there, but not, because you would have had to reach a very high level to be on.
Correct. Mhm.
And a woman have taken a lot of career breaks, very low probably.
Hmm.
Very
So you're-
likely to address, I think, is if you have data on personal attributes like whether the person is married or not. So you can get whether.
Yes, it would be
Yeah.
very hard to get that
Yes.
data.
Okay.
I don't know, in India, can you get that data? Married or not?
no, no, no. No, it's yes,
Yeah,
No, but, sir, I have a
sure.
question. So in a regression setting, you have a dummy for male and female director and you
correct.
check whether the beta is
Mhm.
negative. That's it. You have not interacted with it with some other attributes in any of your regression.
We do for the second hypothesis.
Okay, so if you interact it with some of the, director characteristics, then you can control for, director level fixed effects. Then
Mhm.
many of these things will go away.
Mhm.
Whatever concern that
Okay.
Varun is raising.
Hmm.
So director fixed defects will take care of, things
So you're
that have
saying-
not changed for
Hmm.
that director
Mhm.
in the lifetime.
So you're
all-
saying interact the gender dummy variable with the director age or?
Yeah, in that case, you can apply director level fixed defects. If you
Hmm.
have standalone
Hmm.
male female dummy, then you can't have director fixed defects.
Correct.
Then that will subsume.
Yeah.
But if you interact it with, director, this is my
Okay.
sense, the director characteristics, and still you find for the similar characteristics the pay gap exists, then it.
Okay.
I mean, No, if you,
50 male.
okay,
50 female is not common. The 50 male and the 55 female is common. So what you are saying, you still keep the age at the same, right?
no, age into,
Yeah,
That-
that's what, still
okay,
keep the age the same for make see the effect. But what you need is to calibrate a woman to be of a higher age. Like, equate man to woman, you have to change the rates. So maybe one simple thing would be to just change the women's age, scale it down.
Yeah. Or we could have like tighter contribute, like 50 to 65 for both of them, something like that.
But still, right,
Yeah. that is-
what they are saying is a 50 male
mhm,
is comparable to 55 female,
Yeah.
not to 50
mhm.
is what your point, right?
Mm.
So what you could do is you just calculate,
Yeah.
take some average
Mm.
career gap numbers.
Yeah.
Lower the difference in
It's
price.
not clear.
We do the question.
Okay,
Still the wage. Controlling for age, you still have the gender
Okay.
gap. You know, that-
okay. Yeah, we can do that and also try the, your suggestion, the interaction.
Yeah, I was thinking that if you'll interact, you can put director fixed effects. That
Hmm.
will take care of many of the,
Hmm.
I mean, director level things that doesn't change over time, like career gap.
Hmm.
So that will
Okay.
capture many of those.
Okay. All right, good point. Yeah, it's a long, yeah. Okay, still talking about motivation. So the other thing we found was there is very little research on governance attributes that, if there is a gender pay gap, or what attributes would, mitigate the problem. Okay, so, we're basically looking at, addressing this void in the literature. We are not aware of a study that looks at US directors. There are some European papers, but Europe is a little more complicated because they have executive directors, whereas in our sample, 95% of our directors are all independent. So because after Sarbanes-Oxley, directors are independent. And then the second one is, we look for some moderators, what mechanisms that would mitigate the gender pay gap. So we rely on, social science theories. There is one called critical mass theory. So, these are all extensively used in social sciences. What that says is roughly when 1/3 of a team is female, then it tilts. Let's say if there are below 35%, they are not able to make any impact because, you don't have a critical mass. But once you cross a particular region, then they get the attention, people are willing to listen. So we can test that. And the second one is the idea called homophily, which has been around for, centuries. And so that basically says when people, have some connection bond, they, have sympathy and for each other. There's also something called theory, meaning how people identify themselves with others. And one common mechanism could be gender because it's generally obvious, other than religion, language, or other cases which can be more difficult to, may not be obvious right away. Then as accountants, we have to do some accounting stuff. So we said, let's look at the audit committee because of all the standing committees, audit committee is the most important one because they are the one who basically bless the financial statements. So we want to look at, whether there is even a gender pay gap in the audit committee. Audit committee is very important because like even in India, people who sit on the audit committee, they are sitting on the hot seat because if there is a scandal, they are the first, they are facing a line of fire. There is Srinivasan jar paper where he shows that audit committee directors suffer more reputation fallout compared to somebody sitting on the nominations committee. Because the judge would say, well, you should know better because you were on the audit committee. So meaning they pay more fines and they have a tough time finding a job. So meaning that the litigation risk and the reputation penalties are severe for audit committee directors. So those are the objectives. And so now looking at prior research, we found only, we have some PhD students here. I don't know if anyone has looked at gender pay gap among directors in India, but we found only 2 papers using European data. The first one, Schneider et al., they looked at about 6 countries. And what they found was the gender pay gap is there when women come from the outside. When somebody is internally promoted, it's not there because it's harder to discriminate somebody you already know, right? People you don't know, I guess, they end up getting less money. But then there is another recent paper, Hans Schumer, Norse, using German data, finds no result. Gender pay gap, gender is not associated with executive pay. But again, these studies are a bit difficult because that includes executive directors, whereas ours is a clean setting. But that's basically what there is. Again, I mentioned that, this female risk aversion complicating, the reason for the gender pay gap. So we have a null hypothesis, no difference in total compensation paid to male and female directors. So the way we look at it is we look at three numbers. We look at the cash compensation, we look at the equity compensation, then add them together, the total compensation. Okay, now the second one is, yes, question.
So the point for this reference, if you hold that again, so I understand someone who is more risk averse may prefer cash.
Correct.
But
So the idea is, if, let's say you have a 5-year term. So at the beginning, you agree or you ask for maximum amount of cash that they can pay you, and you're willing to sacrifice some stock, then it's possible that you may miss out on the upside if the stock performs better. Whereas, so basically, that's been kind of documented in the econ literature and also for this CEO pay. But see, for CEO, it's different. You have more freedom asking for, basically whatever cash you think would be consistent with your risk appetite. Whereas for directors, generally what we know is it's 60-40 split, meaning 60% equity, 40% cash. That's a standard deal. So what I'm trying to say is the ability to affect the composition of the pay is very limited if you're a director compared to your CEO, meaning that risk aversion is less of a compelling argument in our city.
anyway, so it's perhaps about CEOs. I don't know that directors, but the point about whether the stock turns out to do well or do badly. That's an exposed.
Correct. Yeah.
But when you measure compensation, so stock compensation now, how is it measured?
Well, I think they probably use like a what is that? Black-Scholes or something. I don't know how. Yeah.
Also, the stock, stock option.
Yeah.
I have one more clarificatory question.
Yeah.
This is regarding risk aversion. So is there any research that has, so in that case, if that is true, we'll find that the cash component of the total compensation of women will be higher than the men.
Correct.
And you
That's what they found. Yeah.
You are saying that this is driven by risk aversion. It may so happen that there is this theory in finance which says that you will diversify. So suppose I work in this company and I own the stocks of this company, then I'm sitting on too much of a idiosyncratic risk. Because if company will not do well, obviously the stock will not do well, and then my salary is also. So what I will do is I'll take the cash and then put it in. I'll just diversify. Rather than risk aversion explaining this behavior, what I'm saying is it can be simple diversification in the sense that I will take cash and put it in an industry which is negatively correlated with the.
Sure. Yeah. Well, all those things may be possible that there is no way for us to observe, right?
So we don't know the net worth of the CEO.
All we know is compensation that is reported in the executive comp database, which is publicly available. Beyond that, if they are married, if they have a gap, and where they diversify, all those things are, I'm sure that would be interesting to have the data, but we can't get them. So here, we are making a prediction based on these theories that when you have female-friendly boards, the gender pay gap is likely to be mitigated because, the prior research says in male-dominated boards, they discriminate women. But when you have female-friendly boards, they are more likely to receive promotions and higher pay. It's intuitive, it's not complicated. And this is the other paper, CAR paper 2017, that finds that greater gender diversity mitigates pay gap among CEOs. So, these are all studies from prior research that basically says when the board is dominated by men, what happens to women? So based on that, we make the prediction that female-friendly board mitigates the gender pay gap. Okay, how do we measure female-friendly board? A couple of things. Number one is the chair of the board is a female, okay? The number two is we look at majority board members being female. Then we also look at female CEO. So those are the three things that we look at.
So because you said that the nomination committee is more responsible to fix compensation,
Correct.
I think the presence of females on the nomination committee can be a good.
That's an excellent point. I asked my PhD student to do that. We haven't done that. That's on the list of things to do.
Okay.
Definitely.
Takes the recommendation. Choice goes to the board.
Correct.
Okay.
Eventually, the decision is made by the full board.
Mhm.
By an is usually not recognized.
Okay.
So then the power dynamics at the board level, who's got the muscle? So that's where if you have a female chair, that can make a difference. So the model comes from a general corporate finance paper. They were looked at excess company. Yes.
Is there any literature on how you actually measure performance of board members?
Yeah, there's a ton of research. I think they look at stock price, well, basically firm performance, but board performance, well, we have indirect measures because, there is no data. So the idea being is, there are like people looked at board size and performance. So meaning again, financial statement numbers and stock price. That's all I can think of. But we don't have, we have a number of meetings they attended, but beyond that, we would know, like, you would need access to like internal data, like minutes and that kind of things. So that's where we are now.
I think the only performance that I can think of for individual directors is upon death. So what's the market reaction on death?
Yeah.
That's the only measure that actually captures.
Yeah, but then we have to wait for them to die. So,
I don't know about US data, but in CMI, I mean, in Indian data, you can see the number of board meeting attended by.
we have. Yeah.
Okay. And then I think that's.
But again, that's only. I mean, just because they attended, they could be using their phone. I don't know, whatever, like our students do in the classroom. So. So this is the model. We have. Oops. Yeah, I'm getting there. Say it again.
Question about turnover.
Yeah.
You can look at two samples. One case where you have a male director replaced by a female director, and another where a male director is replaced by a male director.
And compare the companies.
And compare it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's
another
good.
way of looking at the same issue. Because then a lot of these.
So assuming that they're all equal talented, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that things the same.
Correct. Yeah.
And everything else is constant.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
But we can try this. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we haven't done that, but it's worth looking into. So you have male to male and male and female.
the matching becomes a little, I think the problem will be what is the different if the three, what is it called, the three things? There are two firms, you have to use some kind of synthetic controls to make sure the two samples are parallel trends.
Oh, yeah. Parallel trends here. Yeah. Okay.
That will be that will tell you exactly.
Okay.
No, but I'm saying the same firm.
Mhm.
You want, ideally, you should have the same firm.
Mhm.
That way you control for firm level variation.
But we do actually something that's even better than this as a, a test for endogeneity. So we look at companies that got delisted. So that means everybody loses their job. They are forced to look for a new job, which is sort of like a shock. And then what happens? So it's in a way captures the same thing, but the sample drops dramatically because delisting doesn't happen often, but I'll show you what we found.
Let's say a woman director
Mhm,
is in multiple roles.
mhm.
So a relative gender gap
Hmm.
would remain constant at first.
Mhm. So we do look at busy directors, somebody who serves like more than two boards, as a group compared to less busy directors, but you are suggesting something different.
So what we're saying is the guarantee, all the attributes like the earlier point out,
Hmm.
control for, right?
Hmm.
It's the same director.
Mhm.
But the firm is different, then you get into which
No,
the
but
other
that's not
firms.
in terms of relative gender gap.
Yeah.
So if a woman director is in multiple boards.
Correct.
What's the difference in pay?
Hmm.
That's it.
So then you compare different companies then, right?
If you assume there is a relative gender gap.
You should see it in all the,
you should
yeah.
see it.
okay, I like that. That's a nice suggestion. Yeah. That and also the one, the turnover, yeah, replacement, yeah. So here we have, age, director tenure, education, number of committees, and then firm level variables. Then we also include firm fixed effects. And so the dependent variable would be 3: total pay, cash pay, and equity pay.
Are these in nominal terms or real terms?
These are nominal terms. So it's basically as reported, meaning that we are not making any adjustment for inflation or anything. Is that what you're?
Yeah,
right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
The kind of trend, inflation, effects don't take that into account.
We also do a multiplicative fixed effects firm times year. Generally, those results are also consistent.
But it's a natural law, or is it?
No, it's the actual amount, but we do log as a additional test. See, what happens when you do the log is it kills the variability, which we need in the sample. So we do a robustness test using the log. And then this second model is the female chair of the board and female majority. So that's the interaction beta 2. So I want to show you some univariate numbers just to see what the numbers look like. I know these are just univariate. So you have the females, males, cash, equity, total. You can see that females make more than $2,000 less, more than $10,600 in equity, and total compensation is $12,000 less compared to men. And then if you look at the age, it's 61 years, 65 years, tenure, they have slightly longer tenure, number of committees, 2.05, 2.15. Education, women are ahead, 2.95 compared to 2.85, and all these are statistically significant. So at least, I know these are univariate, but it just shows that, women make less money. And so we also do a little chart. Yeah. Yes. Correct. Yes. Correct. It's 100,000. Yeah. But if you look, it is significant, both mean and median. So this one shows that general, other than 2008 or so, the top line is male. Females lag, and it's kind of persistent across over time. So suggesting that this problem is being persistent. And we also do one more thing, which is something called excess compensation. So excess compensation is the difference between actual compensation and expected compensation or the market compensation. So what that is, the first equation I showed you, we drop the gender variable, and then we can predict the level of compensation based on director attributes, firm level attributes. So we call it sort of like the market compensation. Then you compare it with the actual compensation. So if it is positive, that means you're getting paid more than the market. Negative means you're paid below market. You can see who gets positive, who gets negative. It's fairly obvious that other than 2008, females get negative compensation, meaning that they are underpaid. Question, I think you had a.
Like in US, there, I don't know whether there is any systemic thing that happened that, brought this gender pay gap into news or, into media.
Yeah, we thought about those things. The one thing that, well, two things. One suggestion people said was male-dominated industries like construction and female-dominated industries. I don't know, that could be education or maybe healthcare. We can look at that. Or the Trump effect. When Trump became the president, they just like all these things, it's generally not, the democratic values, when depending on who you talk to. But we try to do some analysis, we couldn't really get anything. So I think we also had similar thoughts on this.
Regarding this involvement in anomaly, I think that
That's a financial crisis, right?
yeah, I think that is driven by
Yeah.
because their males are getting more stock.
Hmm.
In that
Could be.
case, I think
Okay, so the stock went.
yeah, that is, I think one to interpret that in not like that the pay gap was not there.
Hmm.
It was still there, but I think because stock market crashed,
Hmm.
the opposite.
Correct. That is the only anomaly. Other than that, mostly it's negative. Say that again. Well,
Design.
Hmm.
And then of interest.
Correct. That itself is new to the literature.
The expectation that get quoted.
Uh-huh.
So obviously, a bigger group on a smaller group. You combine the average would be always higher.
Hmm.
The bottom is top.
Hmm.
But design women will always be. I mean, they give me a-
But why? I mean,
It's a different thing, but I'm just saying,
Hmm.
already established the case that women are paid enough.
Correct.
Showing that this is there in activity.
Hmm.
It's like a persistent phenomenon. It's not driven by one.
Regression to women has only that exception. Clearly, dummies always.
Yeah.
But anyway. it's
Our
not-
picture is.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
So I have another question.
Sure.
How do you measure education in your life?
Undergraduate degree, master's, like a simple count.
This may not be such a big thing, but some professions are driven, tend to be male driven.
Yeah, that's a male-dominated, female-dominated
Yeah.
industries,
But say, no, in terms of education.
education.
So if you're a firm that's interested in hiring a lawyer or somebody with a legal background,
Hmm.
those may get a little bit more pay and they tend to be male
Hmm.
dominated.
Hmm.
I'm not sure, I'm just
Hmm.
suggesting.
Correct.
Similarly, professors on board, generally there's a,
More
more
male.
men are likely to be, and they may get. So the education measure itself,
Hmm.
if you can measure it, capture it more carefully,
Hmm.
then some of this may go away.
Okay.
So it's not like a firm driven, bad apple argument, but it's just driven by
Hmm.
whom, the type of skill,
Hmm.
right? Law versus professor. Like,
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not sure if
Hmm.
the database gives you that background.
No, I don't think so. I think we can go to their bios somewhere and read their bios and then, look at their degrees, something like that. But something, so we are saying we could come up with a more refined measure of education than,
But then it's about some of the variations.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So this is the basics.
I also had a query.
Yes.
So in the previous slide, we showed that the average age of females on board is lesser than average age of males on board. And particularly in the context that we were discussing, that females are more likely to take career gaps So that should mean that the average age of females on board should be higher than the males on board. So is there any systematic difference? Why is the average age of females on board is less than the males?
I can't really think of anything for now. But if you have, suggestions, the gap thing, it would be very hard to measure. If somebody took a gap, how will you know? You have to read the resume. We have 15,000 directors. I don't know if it's,
Yeah, just saying that if
Yeah.
if it plays a relevance
Yeah.
in terms of their career progression,
Yeah.
then we would expect that females would be of higher age than their male counterparts. But in the data, that
we find the opposite.
we
yeah.
find the opposite.
Yeah.
And is that systematically related to their compensation structure? That is.
Well, all I can say is, we have age in the model, but beyond that, how would you actually test that? You have to basically partition by age and then, try to do some analysis.
Yes, can come back to the point.
Okay.
Just a follow,
Yeah.
like on this point, the averages of the females are less. Could it be possible that that's maybe the reason they, in a sense, justify to pay them less? So then, in a way, they can come up with some at least.
But
They
the
can
level
save
of
their face.
the level of education is higher for females, right? Assuming, well, the other explanation is, okay, let me just show you the result and then I'll give you an alternate explanation and then we'll talk about how we address this since we are short on time. So we have a dummy for female. That's the first, row, 0.007 because, we don't use logs. These are the actual values. So roughly, we are looking at $7,000 less for women compared to men. But the thing is, cash, there is no significance here. And that result is actually an important one because it shows risk aversion is not driving this. Whereas when they look at executive CEO pay gap, cash loads positively. But we don't see that here. So basically, the total compensation is lower, is coming from equity. So you have equity negative, and then that's probably driving this because cash not doing this. So going back to your point, an alternate explanation is men are more productive, okay, compared to women. We actually do 3 tests to address that. So let me just show you the second hypothesis, which is the moderating effect of female chair. So we find that when the chair is female, so now the sign flips from negative, it becomes positive. And so roughly you're looking at about 43,000 more, but still, they have a -8. So the sum of those two comes to, about 35,000. So the point is, when the chair of the board is a woman, then the gender pay gap is mitigated. And then the second one we do is female majority. But female majority does not work. Then we try something called super majority, meaning like 2/3 of the board are women. Okay. Then we are able to see a result here. Again, you can see the coefficient is positive. So again, what that means is it is super female friendly board. Then, the gender pay gap is mitigated. And the other interesting thing is what happens when the CEO is female. You know what? We find the opposite. We were kind of scratching our head. The coefficient becomes, negative here. Equity pay and total is also significant. And then we came across something called the queen bee syndrome. This is a recent paper. The queen bee syndrome is when the CEO is female, they wipe out the competition. They don't want any competition. Okay, that's what, this is coming from Journal of Applied Psychology. So, okay, all right. So that's, we'll just leave it at that. I'll, skip a few slides and then get to the conclusion. So one thing, we do a lot of, the question I raised was, are males better than the female when it comes to work and monitoring effectiveness? So the first thing we looked at is CEO compensation performance sensitivity. So here, the dependent variable is CEO compensation. So you have performance variable. So adjusted ROA is very positive. So what that means is, if the company performs very well, you get more pay. That's understandable. So then we interacted with female. Then we see that it loads positive in this column, but not here when we use returns to measure performance. So what this means is the sensitivity is actually higher when the director is a female. So that means you cannot say men do a better job. There is no evidence for that. The second thing we look at is turnover sensitivity. That means the CEO is fired, turned over. And then again, you see that there is a negative coefficient. What that means is when performance is poor, CEO gets fired. That makes sense. But then when you do the interaction, the interactions don't load. So what that means is, at least female and male, there is no difference. That means that both seems to be having comparable monitoring effectiveness. Then there's a third one. We also looked at discretionary accruals just to see if there is an earnings management effect between male and female. And what we find is, these are all the different, accrual models. So here this is modified Jones. So you have negative, and then this is the Kothari model, negative significant. So what that means is discretionary accruals being negative means lower earnings management when you have a female. So the takeaway from all of this means there is no evidence to say that women do a poor job compared to men. They match men. So meaning that cannot be the reason to justify lower pay. Yeah.
So, for monitoring.
Yes, correct.
I think so they might match them from the monitoring perspective and not from the advisory perspective. So if you could brand directors as, just
This is very hard to do.
I've seen papers like that, but they are a part of the audit committee or some of those committees with the word monitor, and they're branded as the monitoring directors versus the advisory directors. And if you see that gap go away, I think it will add more.
Yeah. Actually, Jerry Zimmerman, as a critique of corporate governance research, this is a JE paper. He basically disagrees with this argument. He's saying you cannot classify directors into advisors and monitors because it's sort of like when you have a PhD advisor, they do multiple roles. You can't really separate them. So, but I see the.
Going away from some countries like Germany, Vietnam, they had these two board structures.
Correct.
One is purely monitoring, supposedly purely monitoring, the other is direct. So they are, the different sample only.
Yeah. And just one more, and then we'll get to the conclusion. So this is the delisting. So what this is the company got delisted. So all the directors are forced out. And so now we are using this sort of like a, shock. But the sample drops to just 98 directors is very small. And then we do a difference in difference test. And what we see is the female times new. See here, new is positive. So what that means is compared to the previous job, now they're getting more money because the previous company maybe was not doing well, got delisted. But here is the thing, the females in the new job, they get, lower total pay and lower equity pay. So even with this reduced sample, with this change, we are seeing that gender pay gap. So basically, to summarize, we do see there is a gender pay gap, and it can be as much as $12,000 less compared to male directors. Somebody said for somebody making $200,000, $12,000 is a pocket change. Well, my response is, even if the difference is $1, as a matter of principle, it's wrong. I would argue why should we pay women less? Right? So magnitude is important, but I think the very idea, because when women are underpaid, what that really means is we don't value their work as useful. That's a real implication.
Part is the hidden cost, right? When you hire.
Yeah.
I don't know what the statistics are, but in some markets, it's costlier to hire, harder to find people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Women, you
labor
mean?
mark- Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
labor market, because there are fewer.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's more expensive
Mhm.
to hire. So when you evaluate the effectiveness of this $4,000, you have to consider those costs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you can imagine, like at the director level,
Yeah.
if you sit on 3 boards, if you pay 12,000 less in each, that's 36,000
Yeah,
per year.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that
Yeah,
the effort you get,
Mhm.
paying that to your.
Yeah.
Consider the net cost of
Correct.
hiring.
And so these are the effects when you have a friendly board. But we also do cross-sectional tests on low litigation, high litigation. And so we do find that women are just as good as men in terms of monitoring effectiveness. So basically the takeaway is there's a larger pool of women who are potentially affected, not just the CEOs. So thank you so much for being patient and with all your feedback. Thank you.
Professor, for your time and sharing the valuable findings. I'll request Professor Reddy to present.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.